Hi everyone. So in this video, I want to talk about the poem "Lying in a Hammock" at William Duffy's farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. So again, I'm going to read it to you. I'll point out a couple things we might need to know, terms that we might need to know, and then talk about how, again, he is establishing a place here. What are some things that he's doing to establish that place? Most of this poem is about saying where we are. And similar to what we get with Hayden's poem, he's going to say where we are, and then at the end, he's going to tell us what we're supposed to think about that. And that's something you can think about. You don't have to do it that way when you're going to be writing your poem, but there is something nice about being put into a place and then say, oh, now here's what we're supposed to think about it. On some level, though, he is building up to some of the ideas throughout here, but we'll talk about what that is. So let me read the poem and then we'll analyze it. So, lying in a hammock at William Duffy's farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. Over my head, I see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. Down the ravine, behind the empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as evening darkens and comes on. A chicken hawk floats over, looking for home. I have wasted my life. So it's kind of an interesting ending that we have in there. A lot of times students are like, wait, what's going on with that last ending? That seems like completely random. But let's look at what he's doing in here. So, first of all, he starts off, over my head, I see the bronze butterfly. So he's lying in a, well, first of all, let's start off, he's lying in a hammock, right? We know what a hammock is, right? That thing you tie between two trees and lie down and relax. He's in a pretty rural setting. That is, he's not in the middle of New York City. He's out at somebody's farm somewhere in Pine Island, Minnesota. I don't know where that is, but it sounds like a pretty out of the way place. Again, just hanging out at the farm. We don't know who William Duffy is. Sorry, my eyes itching. We don't know who William Duffy is, but the poet is not William Duffy. He's kind of visiting this place. But he says, over my head, so he's lying in the hammock, and he looks up, and he can see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, the trunk of the tree. And so he looks up and he sees this butterfly there, right? And again, just a pleasant kind of a thing. We're supposed to think pleasantly about butterflies. Most of us do. SpongeBob has an issue with butterflies when he saw one up close. I don't know if you ever saw that episode when SpongeBob sees a butterfly and he looks at it closely and he gets scared of it. But for the rest of us, butterflies are seen as positive things. And so he's going to see this beautiful butterfly, and he's got that color. Why that color? Bronze. It's an interesting color. It could have been yellow or something. We might think about why he wants to use that. But he is going to put a lot of color in here. The bronze butterfly, the black trunk, and that butterfly is blowing like a leaf, right? It's shaking like a leaf might shake, right? In green shadow. That's an interesting line here because really most shadows, I mean, a shadow is the place where that blocks the light. And so shadows don't usually have a color, right? They're usually black. But here he's going to be underneath a tree. You can see maybe the sunlight coming through those leaves. That's going to create this green shadow, right? And so it's a lot of colors in here, really giving us a sense of where we are in this rural setting. And again, I think it seems very positive. He sees a butterfly, the tree blowing like a leaf in the green shadow, right? Then down the ravine, a ravine, as it says here, is I've got here is a deep, narrow gorge. So you can see the picture over here, something like this, right? It's usually where like a stream or something might go through like that. And so you can imagine something like this. So he says, down the ravine behind the empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. Um, Again, cowbells can't actually follow one another. Cowbells are the bells that the cows wear, right? So you can tell where the cows are. If you want to know, if you're out on the farm, the cows are wandering around. Where the cows, you hear them moving, you hear the bells going, and you can go find them. So the cowbells can't follow one another. The cows can. But he's going to talk about the cowbells so we can hear it, right? We can hear the cowbells moving in the distance, right? And so we can imagine the cows following another, but we have the sound of the cowbells. So they follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. Sorry, a little interruption there, but we're talking about the cowbells that follow each other, the cows follow each other into the distance of the afternoon, um, the distances of the afternoon, right? We're there, and how far off the afternoon seems. Interesting kind of a thing. We don't talk about. It's almost like afternoon's a time, but he's going to talk about it as a distance. And it's kind of again, when you kind of talk about things in that way. I mean, talk about. The shadow is being green, even though it's not green. Talk about the afternoon as being um, a distance when it's really a time. Even we're looking back at what Hayden did when he talked about the cold splintering, right, which you can't do. Those are going to provide some interest and allow us to really see this in a way that we don't actually haven't thought about before. Describing it in a new way is what allows us to really imagine it in some ways. Then he says, to my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, right? Such a nice little simple thing. Field of sunlight between two pine trees. The droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. That's horse poop that he's talking about, right? But he mentions it that it blazes up into golden stone. I mean, you'd be wealthy if if you found gold as big as a pile of horse poop. And so that's this way of taking something even like that's completely unpleasant and say, look how beautiful that is. Right. I lean back as the evening darkens and comes on. A hawk floats over, looking for home. A chicken hawk is just a hawk, a bird. It's a bird. It's called a chicken hawk because it oftentimes kills people's chickens. You got to watch out for them. They like to eat that. And this is what it might look like as it floats over, looking for home. And that's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, is a chicken hawk really looking? Is the chicken hawk really looking for home? Who's looking for a home? Maybe he is, right? Maybe that's what we're really talking about. Sometimes we might talk about the things in the poem and give them the emotions that we have because it helps us think about them that in a different way. And then he has that last line, I have wasted my life. Um, I mean, all this stuff seems so pleasant, and there at the end, I have wasted my life. We might think that he might have wasted his life. This is not his farm. Maybe he should have been here all along, right? Maybe this is the kind of thing that he should have been doing. Some people look at this poem and think that maybe he's been doing too much of this. He needs to get out of the hammock and make something of himself, right? Um, and that's a way to think about it as well. But either way, it's all somehow all of this beauty is going to be very seductive. Either it's so good that he should have been doing it, or it's so good that it traps him into not doing what he actually wanted to do. But again, what we do is we take all of these images about where and when he is, all the things that he's seeing, and we use that in order to help us build up a sense of how he's going to feel about all of that. And that's what I want you to be looking for in your poems and the ones that you're ultimately going to be writing. Be thinking about how you can use those images in order to help us understand the emotions you have. How is it that the place helps us understand something about how you're thinking about your life? So keep that in mind. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the assignment, the first assignment that you have. It's not the full assignment for the poem, but one that's going to preliminary one that's going to be building up to that.